Longest Take podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Longest Take podcast. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by filmmaker and producer Aaron B. Koontz, founder of Paper Street Pictures, also known for titles such as Scare Package, The Pale Door, Camera Obscura, Shelby Oaks, and most notably and most recently, he is the showrunner for Syfy's original series, Revival. Please welcome Aaron to today's episode. All right, so first things first, what are your top 5 favorite movies?
Oh my God, my top 5 favorite movies. You just mean in like literally any genre?
Yeah, just anything.
Oh my God, dude! Like I need to have subgenres or something. I mean, this is like, so the first thing that I always go to when I think of my favorite films is going to be Jaws, which is such an easy answer, I think, for a lot of people, especially now the 50th anniversary and everything that's happening. But I have like a Jaws tattoo. I'm showing you, not that on podcast people can see, but that's awesome. Yeah, that just was a movie that was very pivotal to me when I was younger, and I was always obsessed with sharks, and that was part of it. So Jaws is a monster movie, right? It's a horror film, and so it very much had a huge impact on me. On the other side of that spectrum, I would say is Magnolia. Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia from 1999 was a movie that made me want to make. I mean, Jaws wanted me to make movies. I wanted to be the dude with the megaphone and the trucker hat and the big beard,
right,
with a mechanical shark. Like that seemed cool as all hell. But Magnolia was the movie that made me think about movies differently. It's a 3-hour and 7-minute movie, and I went with a group of friends in Tampa, Florida, when I was in high school, and it just floored me. I sat after the movie was done looking at Melora Walters' face as she's looking down the lens, talking to John C. Reilly in that last shot. And it like messed me up. Like it was just such a weird experience. So, Magnolia would definitely be up there. And then, these other will rotate between things like, Drive, Aliens, The Thing, There'll Be Blood, Boogie Nights. Paul Thomas Anderson in particular, like that stretch of movies are just extremely important to me. I'm obsessed with Parasite and Everything Everywhere All at Once in the last few years. Like every time I watch both those movies, they get better. So I don't know, somewhere in that space, I would say, are my favorite movies. And then weirdly, like Sing Street, I'm obsessed with. I think is just an unbelievable movie. John Carney, who made Once, and that movie. Yeah, but I mean, it's going to change. It changes day by day. The two that are always there, though, are Jaws and Magnolia. And then, everything kind of rotates around those.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, like you said, it's already the 50th anniversary of Jaws, which it's crazy to think about. But I even rewatched it recently, and I'm like, it ages like wine. It's still, just from a filmmaking standpoint, from the way that they set up a lot of the tension there, like it still feels like just well constructed. And when you look at the technology at the time, it's not as much as now, but it's still just as effective, just as efficient back then.
Well, and the technology doesn't make something better. I mean, that's right. The thing. Jaws is the best example of restrictions breed creativity. The shark is not working ended up being the best thing that could happen for that movie, and force them as filmmakers to think about different ways that he's so over budget and all the pressures that are there that it had to be, okay, let's do the barrels and have that work. But the barrels give me a better idea of strength and what Bruce, the shark can do than seeing it, hit a boat or anything or whatever big mechanical thing underwater or whatever those pieces would have been instead. Like it just, that's what kind of creates that. So yeah, I'm just a big believer in, all these things are going to happen to you on a movie set, and Jaws is one of the best examples of this, where shit is going to go wrong. It's going to hit the fan in every possible way. Murphy's Law is going to show up. In fact, they should call it, Bruce's Law or something now, because after Jaws, with everything that went wrong with the shark. But you have that, and then you just cannot allow those things to deter you. They must just detour you. And it's like, okay, that didn't work. We don't have time. We gotta move forward. What's our new idea? And thinking on your feet like that, I think, is one of the best traits of a good, mature filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, I think that's why it ages so well, and you put it up against a lot of what we see today. And one of my favorite things about filmmaking is, like you said, the piece where like shit will go wrong, because that usually breeds more creativity, because there's problem solving, troubleshooting, right? And when people get into that headspace, you end up creating something better than what you probably originally wrote. And Jaws, I think, great for that. And with Magnolia, I'm with you in the sense of, like, when I first saw that was the first time I kind of saw something that it was still just like a drama, but it was ambitious in its execution, and it's 3 hours long, right? And it was my introduction to PTA, and I just that's just another movie that I would love to hear it be referred to more often in these conversations of favorite movies. Because it's just,
I could do a whole podcast on Magnolia, like an entire podcast on Magnolia, on all the things that I think make it utterly brilliant. I mean, even PTA said, like, he'll never make anything as good as Magnolia. That's how much he believes in what it is he's done. And yeah, the ambition that just kind of flies off the page, flies off the screen, but it did happen, right? That little, when they zoom in on the poster, on that print, all that work was done by Melora Walters. When I got to be full circle with that, because Melora Walters, from that, Claudia Wilson Gators, her character, was so impactful to me. And like I said, that look at the end of the movie. And then I hired her in The Pale Door to play the Madame of our Witches. And, because I was like, I had to. This is who I want. This is everything that I want this to be. So it's pretty special. Yeah, there's so many layers to it. So many layers to it of, like, grief and pain. And I mean, in the movie, literally everyone breaks out into song, and they're all singing the same song, this Amy Mann song, in the middle of the movie. Like, that's just crazy shit. And there's a reason why it won the Golden Lion and all this, and coming out of Berlin, and where this became, and yeah, cemented. Boogie Nights cemented PTA, but to me, this was his opus, in every way. And I've seen it, I don't even know how many times.
Yeah, you could. There's definitely enough there for you to justify a podcast if you ever wanted to do it. People have done it on other stuff. So, I mean, if you ever get time for that, I would listen to that for sure.
Sure.
So Jason Blum recently came onto the Town podcast with Matthew Baloney, where he discussed the alleged failure of Megan 2.0. He took accountability and spoke a bit about failure and how that plays into the industry. The importance of owning failures as much as wins. Not so much failures, but have you had challenges thus far in your career that yielded the results that you were not looking for?
I mean, well, first off, it's interesting that Megan, this small movie that they didn't know what it was going to be, and then because it went viral on TikTok, and then they re-edited the movie and removed some of the blood and made it PG-13, becomes this massive success. And then you get a sequel, and now you're talking about failure. Like, I just think, like, we're moving the goalposts on what this is, right? Like, I think, Gerard Johnston, the director of that, who's an amazingly talented director, and what's there, it's just like, why are we, because at the box office this wasn't the number, or pivoted, or did something different? I mean, you can't just redo the original Megan again and again. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, that's a diatribe on another day. But I think, you just can't define the success or failure to related to this point. The success or failure of this has to be defined by yourself. It can't be defined by external things, because as soon as you put it in their hands and anyone else's hands, it's out of your control. Like, and then who's to say you failed or succeeded, right? Like that's just such a heavy burden, to put yourself there. Like, if your goal is, I want to make a commercial movie that is going to release to the masses, and my goal is for it to make $50 million at the box office. Well, number one, I don't know what your place in art and filmmaking is, because that's a different goal than what filmmaking is at its core. But then secondarily to that, like, sure, I guess you could say I didn't hit the $50 million mark, so that means I'm a failure. Sure, fine. You can go with that if you want. But I think it has to be defined by ourselves. And I know, like, on Revival right now, Luke, who's my creative partner on that, you don't really know what's going to hit with audiences or not. All we can do is say, this is what feels right to us. This is what we would like to see. This is what we're most excited about. And right now, that show, I'm extremely proud of the show and the series, because it is the show I wanted to make, despite massive limitations and all of those, Bruce's Law, as we were joking before, right, that threw us through a wrench, that happened in spades, and still have happened in post and whatnot. But that's okay. It's we leaned into it, and I think made something that makes us happy. Now, whether or not, we're grateful that some critics and audiences do seem to like the show so far, but at the same time, I can't hold my hat to that. I can't hold on to that hope that that's what it's going to be. All I can do is say, this is the thing I wanted to make, and I'm proud of making it. And then you have to walk away from it, and let that be. So, but yeah, I mean, I've made movies that were panned by critics. I've made movies that were loved by critics. So my favorite films were the ones that were panned, and some of the ones that I don't like the most that I've been involved in were the ones that were heralded. So I think it just all depends. And again, that's why we have to be the arbiter of ourselves and not allow anyone else to try to dictate, these external forces to dictate what we determine a failure or success.
Yeah, and I can absolutely agree with that. I mean, just if you're in this kind of field where you're a filmmaker, if you're just grabbing onto everything that somebody else says for validation, it's going to discourage you so much faster, and you're not going to want to do it anymore, right? You need to have that kind of, like what you're saying, that internal gauge, as to what you consider failure or success. I had a quick question about, you said some of your movies were panned by critics, but you love them. What do you think the disconnect was between, like, you and the critics? Like, I know sometimes things just don't gel for someone else, but I was just wondering if you thought about, what worked for you, but you just think, like, well, I guess that missed the mark for them, but whatever, it's no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a limited sample size. When you look at certain critics, it's like, and I'm friends with a number of critics as well who are wonderful people, and it's a vibe. I mean, the amount of movies that I've watched where the first time, okay, great example of this. The first time I saw Zodiac, I was like, I don't know if that quite worked for me, because my expectations of what Zodiac were going into the theater were that this was going to be Seven, right? Because it's David Fincher, it's a serial killer movie. I'm like, okay, we're going to get another Seven, and I loved Seven. Seven was one of my favorite films. Well, cut to 5, 6, 7 years after that release, I think Zodiac is a vastly superior film to Seven. And I still love Seven. I still think Seven's amazing. But it took me time to find that appreciation for it. And part of that was because of expectations I had set for myself. Part of that was, between all of these things start to create a idea of what you think a movie needs to be. And then when it doesn't meet those expectations, that will inadvertently or directly lead to, something feeling disappointing. And so I think so many factors come into play, and, why but I also will say I like to play with tone. That's a thing that I think is really fun. And in the process of finding my voice, there were, even like the first movie I made, Kim Obscura, which was one that was panned by critics. But I'm not super, there's a lot of issues with it that I think are valid and are there, but there also were hints of something really, really great. And I had to go through that and then make this absurdist meta horror comedy and scare package to kind of juxtapose those to figure out where my voice was. And it's a little in between. And I think Revival is now threading that line very, very nicely for me, which is something that is funny, that is quirky and weird, but also violent and has melodrama and high stakes and a high concept idea. And I think I had to kind of find that, and that took time. But if you watch Kim Obscura, there's a sequence in the middle where they go into this kind of outlandish moment where he goes to the store to buy a bunch of, like a hardware store, excuse me, and he goes to buy a bunch of materials. It's basically like a serial killer starter kit, and then it leads to this like kind of absurdist fight with Jeremy King, who oddly enough ended up being in the Scare Package movies. And it's really fun, and it's over the top, and it's completely insane. And I had so much fun making it, and I love that scene so much in that movie because because to me in that movie it's a guy who's having to learn. He sees these images and these photos that he's taken of imminent deaths that are going to happen, like the next day. So he's got to like kill someone to save his wife. Right, is kind of the thing. His wife's going to die. He must kill someone, replace her in the photo. So weird kind of concept. But in the process of that, I'm like, well, this guy's not good at killing people. And so what does that look like? And I think that's going to be fun to see someone who's not good at killing people, who then, unfortunately, because of a situation, must kill this like massive hardware manager dude who's going to be super hard to die, hard to kill. And we even, in that, there's a joke where we used... the name of the queue for that was named after The Thing, with the big fight sequence of The Thing with Keith David and Roddy Piper. And so we're paying homage to that. But the rest of the movie is like melodrama, high stakes, serious stuff. And this kind of comes out of nowhere. And I can get how that's probably too jarring, and that's probably valid. But it was me, like, I still had this inclination that I wanted to play with that tone. And now critics seem to love this weird mix of tone that I have, right? And what's there. But I think I had to learn how to curate that and kind of massage round the corners, around the edges, if you will, to reach the point of where I'm at. So, but sometimes people, I remember for that movie too, I remember some people who had to review it, they were told they wanted to watch Tom Cruise's The Mummy, which was releasing the same weekend. And in order to watch that, they had to watch these other I don't know the other movie, but they had to watch these other two movies first. And then they could be at this first edition, something like this. And so people had to watch my movie at like 9 a.m. on, a Friday. And then all to be able to see Tom Cruise's The Mummy, which was by all accounts pretty bad. And then, so what's going to happen when you get home that day? You're just annoyed. Like, oh, I wasted my whole day for this shit. Right. And I don't blame them, not to mention that cut of Kimmer Obscura, my first movie, is not my cut. I had Final Cut. They re-edited it, and it's all different. And that's, so for those reasons, yeah, it's much worse. But honestly, to be fair, even my original cut wasn't that great. And I can acknowledge that now and have the maturity to understand that and look back on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the take there with absurdism, and it makes sense that you really liked Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's a movie that just dives headfirst into this idea of absurdist and quirkiness, and I think that it makes it more interesting, and I'm glad that it's being a little more received nowadays. And like you said, you've spent your career kind of, fine-tuning that with your films. I mean, the Scare Package movies, they have that horror comedy element, right? I just think that, absurdism goes underappreciated, so I'm glad to hear that that's something that you're into.
I think absurdism can work. You just have to have heart with it. And I think that's the thing about, don't worry, not all absurdism has to have a heart, but I think if you want to balance the tone and not just go like it's 100% absurdism the entire time, the way to keep somebody and ground them back emotionally is going to be with heart. And I wrote a thing with Letterboxd a couple years back called Horror with Heart. And it's really a big motto of my company, Paper Street Pictures, and the types of movies that we make, and, everything that's in the genre space that we focus on. And all of them come with, there's an element of heart, like real heart. Some are really scary. Some are downers. Some are just really fun comedies. But within that, there's a connection there that I think is really important, and emotionally, and that, and yeah. So Horror with Heart is kind of and even though Everything Everywhere All at Once is not horror, but it is like fantasy adventure at heart, with heart. Something. It's the same essential idea of taking these things. For me, it's the horrific or the scares or the absurdity, the gore or whatever that is, and then juxtaposing that with that heart and the pathos that you can get with character moments. They do the same thing, with time travel and sausage fingers and, ratatouille shit and whatever, and it works brilliantly. And is, again, the heart is what grounds us back and makes us want to look for more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could do a whole podcast about that movie probably, because I absolutely loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. And we talked a little bit about, some of your earlier projects, but what was your origin story? Like, what got you into film? I saw on your IMDb that you were production assistant on Tomb Raider back in like 2001. What got you into all of this?
I worked a number of movies where I was a production assistant, production coordinator, different things. I worked on Too Fast, Too Furious, Monster, Charlize Theron, a bunch of things like that. And I think at that time I just wanted to have set experience. I went to Full Sail University, where actually just this past March I was elected into their Hall of Fame, which was a huge honor. And
congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was really, really special and really, really cool experience to go back there and be honored like that. But it was, I just wanted to, I started a company when I was 17 years old. Like, I've always been this kind of like entrepreneur at heart. I'm just someone, with no money, raise the money, like, everything, like what I needed to do. And I think something about filmmaking, it was always in my DNA. I just never believed that I could do it. I just never believed it was really possible. I had been told it was impossible for so long by so many people that I believed it. And again, that's the dangers of believing others about you, right? Like, oh, this is not good. And you believe that. My first movie, everybody told me it's not good. If I believed that, I wouldn't be where I am right now with my own TV series,
right.
and what's happening. But yeah, I think I saw a book that was behind the scenes photos of Jaws. And I realized that people made these things, and that was so fascinating. I was always a writer growing up. I wrote poetry as a kid, was always into short stories and all this. And then I wrote my first screenplay when I was a senior in high school and sold it, actually, which was crazy. And thought that was going to be my career and that I was going to be a writer forever. And then I never sold anything again for like 15 years after that. Tried, but nothing happened there, and ended up working in the game industry for a long time, tech, after graduating from film school. So I graduated from film school, worked, like you were saying, like the Tomb Raider films, all this random stuff. Any job I could get, I just wanted to be proximity to set. I wanted to see people working. I wanted to learn. I wanted to take it all in. But then it was just hard to make ends meet. I was in Florida. There wasn't a really good union situation for crew members there, and it just wasn't very viable. So I ended up taking a job in the game industry, and then weirdly worked my way up in the game industry. I worked at EA Sports, THQ, worked on a bunch of big games like the Madden football games, Tiger Woods golf, those types of games. And then on THQ, worked on the Saints Row games, Red Faction, Battlefield, back at EA, and a bunch of stuff. And then eventually did that for almost 10 years. I was in the game industry, worked at Zynga as well. We did Words with Friends, hanging with friends, the Farmville games, stuff like that, Draw Something. But I still had this itch that I hadn't scratched for the longest time, which was to make movies. And I went and saw Kevin Smith speak, of all people, and he, just said, start surrounding yourself with people who say why not rather than why. And I was driving home and I said, man, I just want to make movies. And my friend Shane, who I always remember doing this, said, why not? And it gives me chills to this day. And about a week later, I started Paper Street Pictures, and I had no idea what that meant to start a company. But I just said, okay, I'm doing it. Like, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this happen. And I was like, all right, and I'm going to fail, but I'm going to be ambitious. And we just started making short films, and, I was like, okay, I'll direct it. I'll figure it out, and did that and made a really awful short film, then made a little less awful short film. And then next thing we knew, we had one that was pretty decent, and then made a feature, made a not so great feature, and then made a little better feature, and kept moving through. But, had to teach myself everything. There was no one who gave me a bunch of money. I put all my personal money in. Whatever I was making at these tech jobs and game industry, I just reinvested back into making the short films, developing, writing. And then I want to say it was like 2011, 12, somewhere in that range. Zynga was close. I ran the Austin office. I moved around a lot. I ran the Austin office in North Austin for Zynga. And it was, had 200 or so people there. And they said, hey, we're going to close the office. We want you to move to San Francisco and we're going to give you a pay raise and all this, but you have to lay off all these people. And I'm like, oh my God. And I've already gone through the layoffs in 2008. It was horrible. And having to lay so many people off and what it was. And I just hated it. And then I was like, if I go to San Francisco right now, I'm never going to do this. Like, I'm just going to get sucked back into this world. And I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I was very lucky to work in the game industry. But I remember someone also gave me a magazine once that showed me, it's like, hey, look, you have the best job in America. And I was like, what? And it was like some survey and it showed, and at that time I was a QA manager, and it was talking about how, the survey and salary and all these things, all this stuff that came through, and it's the best job in America. I was like, holy shit, like that's pretty special. And I thought about it. And then that night I was like, well, then why don't I feel like I have the best job in America? Like, why am I not happy? And that itch just started to permeate. And then I saw Kevin Smith, talked to my friend, and I was like, screw it. Like, I'm going to do this. So then when that moment happened in 2012, just a couple years later, and they said, hey, do you want to go here? And I said, well, what if I don't want to go to San Francisco? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this is, you've been positioning yourself. This is a raise. You're going to take over more stuff. Like, this is a huge opportunity for you, And I said, yeah, but what if I don't? I'm like, well, technically we're closing your facility, so you would get a severance. And I was like, oh. So, and like, but you, like, again, Aaron, like, we're investing in you, this is a whole thing. And you're going to lose all this. Here's all this stuff you're going to lose, and a list of things and all this. And it was a really tough decision. But I just remember I sat up in bed and like, I was like, man, I could just take that severance right now and just go all in. Like, there's nothing that's going to keep me back. And I just kept feeling like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And I did. And I said, I'm sorry. And I declined. To this day, they still try to hire me back.
Wow.
I mean, I just got hit up by them, like, not even 6 months ago, saying, hey, if you ever want to come back, like, sort of 10 years ago. And they still hit me up. So something to keep in mind: if you're good at a place and you leave on good terms, they're not going anywhere. They want good employees. So I always knew that if I failed, I could get back. I always felt like if I failed, I could get back there. And, but I also took it as that was my second job. My first job was trying to make movies. That was really what it was. So I leaned into it, and then I took those next 6 months off, blew through all that money, and ended up, and I wrote Camera Obscura, and which I sold to Universal. And then we were off and running, and then that salary got me to the next salary, and then took side jobs in between, and then just kept going. And then I'd say for the past 7 years or so, I've been solo as a filmmaker and haven't had to take any side jobs. Thank God. So yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that, that's one of those inspirational stories that you'd love to hear about, because it was do I stay in this, corporate good paying job, or do I follow the artsy passion, right? And it's great that you made the right choice, and just since then it's kind of worked out for you. And I think that I wasn't as familiar about the video game stuff, but I think that being in that industry and then being in filmmaking, there's a lot that you could I'm sure there's a lot of industry things that you learn in the video game industry that you can, if not apply, it helps when it comes to things such as like project management, for instance. Because you look at any sort of film that's being made, that's a project. Directing, producing on a film, there's this sense of project management around it. And when you're working corporate at like a video game company, I mean, that's what it is. It's budgets, it's time crunch, it's all this stuff. So it really helps, at least for you, build like a really strong repertoire that, I imagine is still helping you today with how you do things.
Oh my God, you nailed it. I mean, you completely nailed it. I mean, because what you're doing is you're managing a number of different creatives toward a budget and a goal and a timeline. Mm-hmm. That is no different than producing. That's producing. It's the same thing. I just get to do the things that I really want to do now, rather than, some tech companies' bids. I mean, I remember at one point I worked for this company, Accenture, where I was actually the director of project management. Like that was my job, and had tons of project managers that worked with me and under me. And I did it a couple times. And at one point I was working for Halliburton and ExxonMobil. And I was like, what the hell has happened? Those became two of my clients. And I'm like, I have sold my soul to the devil. What is going on? And I ended up quitting later that year. I was like, guys, I can't keep doing this. They kept offering me more money to stay and all this. And it was horrendous. It was awful. But within that, I learned an infrastructure. I learned how to manage. I mean, we still, to this day, when people see our waterfall documents and our scheduling documents, which we custom made, they're like, what is this stuff? And I'm like, no, this is like Papercrew does things a little bit different. And a lot of that was through Scrum methodology and project management methodology and keeping people organized and what's there. And I mean, I just ran, ran this show, this TV series, and talking with other writers, they're like, yeah, I was a good writer, but then all of a sudden to become a showrunner, I had to manage a TJ Maxx. And I'm like, I didn't know what that meant. And I'm like, I know what it means to manage a TJ Maxx. Like essentially, in the game industry and in the tech industry, I did this. And so it allows you to understand how to speak differently to different types of people and how to get the most, how to get them excited, how to motivate them, how to balance that. And then you combine that with, I had a lot of onset experience from when I first started out in the industry. So I worked in so many different positions. I worked in G&E, worked in camera, worked in the production office, production assistant, did all those things. I grew an appreciation for what they did, but then now I had the managerial skills to help them feel seen and understand motivation and understand delegation and time management. I mean, the amount of things that we were doing 5-6 movies a year, and then I moved on to showrun a TV series, and I've produced 25 features now in the last 7 years.
Oh wow.
And that's and I also ran a TV show, right, where I was also the lead writer, by the way. So it's not like wrote multiple scripts, rewrote a lot of the scripts that were even written from our writers. And I'm able to do that because of my time management, because of the personnel management, and how all those things come together really, I think, gave me an edge, a real edge to other showrunners, other producers, and how to get things done. So I take a lot of pride in that. But yeah, I mean, it was the best thing. I thought I should have jumped. Sometimes I was like, I should have run right into the film industry. I shouldn't have gone to the game industry to short. I should have just kept stuck with it. But the best thing for me was to take those like 8 to 10 years, figure out management styles, figure out people mature, figure out the kind of stories I wanted to tell, right. And learn from so many others. And it really, really, really helped me out.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And, a thing about that too, that at least I've learned over the years, is like, whether you're working with someone that you don't really like, or you're working somewhere that you're not that much of a fan of, there's always something you can learn in that process. And you could take whatever you can learn from it, and you could just apply it, when you get somewhere that you want to be. And I think that's really important to have that mindset. But, kind of going into Paper Street Pictures, what's your process like when it comes to, finding projects or going through projects that you might want to option? Just what does that look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, we have meetings, so Cameron Burns, who's my head of development, he's probably the first curator. Farrell Rose also, who's in a development executive, they'll kind of look at a lot of the stuff that kind of comes through, because we get a ton of cold submissions, and we'll look and just see if anything, rarely in a cold submission does something come through. It's usually someone's recommended someone or knows someone, because then you kind of have an idea, like you trust people to help be curators of stuff. Because there's just, I mean, God, everybody thinks their script is amazing, and it's not. It's just not. I've read so many scripts. I mean, it's so tough because there are not a lot of good scripts out there. Like this idea that, I just need my break with scripts. And I'm like, we're looking. Like if there's an actually truly great script, like we'll take it 100%. Like, and we're busy, we're still making 3-4 movies a year. But I mean, and we have a very busy, now that I'm trying to squeeze stuff in between, if I'm lucky enough to have a season 2 for Revival, and we're trying to squeeze as much stuff as we can, and we're expanding. We've got some more producers on the team as well, and what we're trying to do. So we've got kind of a convergence of films, but still at the same time, I mean, those all get developed. I mean, Shelby Oaks, which we're going to release later this year with Neon and everything, October 3rd, that's going to be a huge film. A lot of people are going to reach out to us because of that movie, I'm sure, and already are. But that movie started with a script that Chris Stuckmann sent me that was a $20 million movie. And I was like, man, this is good, but this is way too much for us to be able to do. And again, Chris came as a recommendation from Josh Lobo, another filmmaker that I knew. He's like, hey, this is a smart guy. He's a good writer. So I was like, okay. I didn't know Chris is, he has a huge YouTube following, a couple million followers and all this, but I didn't know any of that. I had not seen his reviews. I actually had seen them, just didn't realize it was him, and all that. And we're at a film festival, and he sends me that script, and it was, but it wasn't for us, but it was a good script. It was well written. And I was like, look, man, I think if we're going to do something, we need to do something really low budget, and like, what's a high concept idea that can be scary, that and maybe has a YouTube element, because I think it could be really fun to play with. And I kind of pitched him a couple ideas, and then he had this one idea that was a spin-off of something that him and his wife Sam had done for their Halloween series and videos that they would do. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then he started to write it, and then we developed that script for over 2 years together. 2 years. Right? Like, and it took a while. And then we were still rewriting things. Like, we just got to do some reshoots and some additional photography, which was amazing that Neon afforded us that opportunity. But they were still writing new things, to kind of fit. I mean, it's this idea that the writing's done, I just don't think is true. I think you're always evolving. So when we're looking at scripts, like, number one, I think it's going to be, is it someone that we want to work with, that we think we can develop something? I mean, we've had good scripts come to us a couple times, and then we meet with that individual, and they're just, this is it. Yep, this is my vision. I'm an auteur, blah, 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 all this. And I'm like, no, dude, good luck to you. You're talented. I totally see it. Bless you. Go off and do it. But I don't want to, for 2.5 years, 2-3 years, work with you. I'm too old for that now. Like, I want to work with cool people that value the collaboration, that value what producers do, and don't just look at a producer as the means to an end, of like that person standing in the middle of getting me the money so I can make my vision happen, blah, 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 twirl my mustache bullshit. Like, just we're all filmmakers, and we're trying to make this stuff together. Like, I'm a writer and a filmmaker too. I want to develop the story with you. I'm going to help you look good, like, that's what I'm going to do. And there's some films where I'll just come in as a consultant, I get credit as a producer, but then there's other films where we're producing, and when it's full on paper street, like making the thing, 9 times out of 10, those are really good movies. And critics like them, they do well, and I think, and we position our filmmakers to look good, and a lot of them have gone on to make bigger stuff right now, and their careers are taking off. And I think they just need to trust that we are good at our jobs and what's there, and finding the right people. And Chris is a great example of that. Chris trusted me, trusted the team, and Ashley and Cam and Alex and everyone. So, but I think it starts with the person, kind of getting a vibe. If we don't know the person, or we're not recommendation, then it's going to be that script. It's going to be that deck. You have to get me to want to read a script, which is hard, because I go in thinking like every script's going to probably be awful, because I'm just so used to it at this point. It's I'm a wounded animal that you're reaching out to pet me, and I'm shuddering and pissing myself in the corner because I've been abused so long by so many bad scripts, that. And there's just so many people who think they can write right now. And then there's scripts that come in too, and I'm like, wow, this entire scene was AI. I can tell right now this entire scene was AI, and the shit. And so it's tough. But if you have a really good high concept idea, you're a cool person, and you're willing to develop something, and you're like, I just want someone to help me make this the best movie it can be. And you don't think it has to be, and you don't come in with this like idea of a budget. Because we're the experts on the budget. We're the ones that'll figure out how to get it made for less. We're the ones that'll figure out like, no, this is not a $10 million movie. This is a $1 million movie. And here's how you can do it. And because of that $1 million, that's money we can actually get, and your movie can actually get made and seen. And there's so many talented filmmakers out there who get nothing made because they are still trying to make the 10, 15, $20 million movie. And I'm like, good for you, man. In that same time, I've made 15 movies. So what do you want to do? You know, like, I'd rather make $15 million movies than wait 10 years to make one $15 million movie, like 10 times out of 10. Like, there's no way. That's just not how I work. And so, you know, we're looking for, and right now, like, more specifically with Paper Street, and then I have a consulting firm called Blood Oath. With those two entities that take submissions, we are looking for high concept ideas, limited numbers of actors and locations, you know, typical stuff, so we can keep the budgets low, that, you know, have an original point of view, you know, that's like, oh, this is a different take on this, right? Like, that's, I think, what gets us the most excited. And then those first 10 pages better be fucking great. You know, like, I don't know what else to say. Like, they better be great. If they're not, I won't get to page 11. Unless it is a recommendation from someone who says, oh, it really picks up at page 20 or page 50, you know, hopefully not 50, because that's too long. Because audiences have no attention span now, and you have to think about that. So, because this is a business, you know, and as much as I would love to just give someone the space to be an auteur, and like, I believe in you as a filmmaker, you have to make that money for no money, because make the movie for no money, because if we can't make the money back, then no one's going to give us money again. Then we've you know, that you kind of blown your load, you're done, there's nothing else you can do, and those people will no longer want to make movies with you, you know. And people always ask, like, you know, we do this outside of LA, you know, with my company, and they're like, well, how do you get to make so many movies? And I'm like, the secret is we get the money back to the investors. And then they're like, oh, this was a lot of fun, I didn't know I could make money making movies. And then they give you the money again, right? And then, you know, then they tell their friends and they want to invest, and I tell their friends no, they can't, because we've already funded this. And I'm like, I don't want the budget to go up, because I don't know that I can make you your money back. And then all that tells them, they're like, wait a second, you're turning down money for my movie? And I'm like, yes, because I'm protecting the investors I already have on board. And as a producer, you have the fiduciary duty and you have the creative duty, and you're trying to balance both of those the best you can. So it's, anyway, that's a very long-winded answer, as all my answers are. You're quickly learning. But I think we know it when we see it. We want an ambitious idea, high concept, a cool hook, you know, and then something that we can make on a budget, you know. And look, if it's all those and it's really low budget, I don't care about cast or any of that stuff, because horror can be your cast. And I mean, there's a movie right now that we got sent, and I can't say anything about it, but it will cost us maybe $200,000 to make.
Wow. And
I am as excited about making that movie as I am another movie that's $5 million. So, you know, I mean, that's how it goes, because I believe so much in that idea and that filmmaker. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great way to put it too. And I think it really puts into perspective just how much of that footwork that, you know, a production company does for these projects. Like you said, it's not like you just care about the money. You care about it getting made, but you understand this whole other element of it that has to do with the money. Like there is that, you know, that balance that you have to try to find there. And since you mentioned it really quickly with Shelby Oaks, so I know you probably can't say much about those reshoots, but how different do you think it's going to be compared to what premiered at, what was it, Fantastic Fest?
Fantasia.
Fantasia. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, in Montreal. Yeah. It's there are, I mean, it's the same basic movie. There are scenes though that have been enhanced, if you will, and some gore and some scares that we were able to really dial up and take advantage of. But yeah, I mean, I think I speak for Chris, myself, and Neon, and my fellow producers. It's a better movie. It's a better movie now, which is so exciting. And we love the movie that we had before. We loved it. We're very proud of it. And again, so did Neon. Neon bought that movie, right? And we didn't have to do this. Neon was not saying you have to do anything. This was us being excited when Neon said, if you could do something, what would it be? And we're like, oh my God, this, we would love to do this. Like, we never got to do this. This would be so cool, and then they also gave us another editor to play with, Brett Bachman, super talented editor from, a bunch of Midnight Mass with Mike Flanagan and Fallen House of Usher, but then also Hard Eyes, Josh Rubin's film and Companion. Just a wonderful editor, and he he had ideas too, and so we were able to play with that. And there's something really special when you have the time to have truly fresh eyes on a movie, because you're just working so hard to the bone, to grinding, and then you start to lose sight of it. And I think this is actually where you'll see like Netflix movies that are $200 million movies with these like unbelievably talented directors and creators. And then the movie's like, what is that? Like, how did they make that? Like, what is going on? It's a mess. It's a beautiful mess, but it's a mess. And this is because there's no real restrictions on what's going on, and they get to kind of run wild, and you can't see the forest through the trees. And then as artists, we just we run ourselves ragged, and you think that you're doing the right thing, and it takes time. Then you need context. Then you go back and you rewatch something. And I'm not saying those particular directors would go back and rewatch and say, oh man, I wish I could redo it. But I know that I do. Everything I wish I could redo. I'm like, oh, I could do this so much better if I could just have one more shot at that scene, or one more shot at this take, or anything, and Neon, after one full year of being done with the movie, essentially, almost, from the Shelby Oaks Fantasia premiere, she finished right before Fantasia. So like 9 months later, we were able to do whatever we wanted, and that is unprecedented for an indie film, and pretty special. And the movie's so rad. The movie is, the movie will speak for itself. But I'm very excited for people to see it, and Neon is very excited. And even the people who saw it at Fantasia, the things we have done, I think, unlock it in really unique ways. And yes, it's cool. It's very cool. Yeah,
I'm definitely looking forward to it. Is there going to be any sort of trailer or release date announcement anytime soon?
Yeah, no, it's coming out October 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah, October 3rd.
Sweet.
So Neon's making its Halloween, push in theaters, so I don't know how many theaters, but it'll be pretty wide, so you should be able to find it in a local theater.
Oh, hell yeah.
And yeah, they're, I believe, because it's October 3rd, it's not that far out. And when you think of marketing and promotion, that, there could be a trailer coming pretty soon. Yeah.
Awesome.
Rumor has it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So to jump a little bit back into, your directorial ventures, I mean, you said that you wanted to be a filmmaker from the beginning, so I imagine that's what it has to do with, but kind of what inspired you to be like, I want to direct this? And even as you got into more producing and jumping back into the director's chair, just like, at what point are you like, I'm in the mood to direct again, or something like that? Just, what's that like for you?
Yeah, and well, it's interesting. Like for me in particular, I know some people come in and they're like, I want to be a director. Like I wanted to be a writer. Like that was my thing. I just, the idea of having an idea in my head, just this random concept, writing it down on a piece of paper, and then however long later, it's on the largest screen possible, and someone in some country I've never met or connect or heard of or anything, we don't know each other on any level, is crying or laughing or shrieking, and I'm creating that moment for them from me in a dark corner in a room writing to myself. It's just such a magical thing. Like it's really, really hard to explain for those that have been able to experience that. I just think it's that level of creativity is just peak for me. It's so special because it was so special for me as a kid. Like movies were my escape, and they were, when things weren't going well, I could put on a movie and I could immerse myself in an entirely different world and get away from the shit that was going on. And I think, and I know that's those escapes right now are needed more than ever by so many. And so the opportunity to do that. So that's where it all started. It was all just writing. And then I became a director to protect my writing, because I was like, okay, well, now if I'm writing this and then they're going to go off and direct it, I'm seeing how these things get changed. And then I became a producer to protect my directing. So that's really where it came from. So it all starts, it's all about me with these ideas that I want to push forward. I mean, that's really, really where it is, and trying to conserve, because when people say don't direct on the page when you're writing, I think that's a complete and utter bullshit. Like you need to direct on the page, like put whatever you need. It needs to be a blueprint. I want to be able to see the movie. And if you can't see the movie in your head while you're writing it, you're doing something wrong, in my opinion. So when I get really passionate, I mean, I have a couple scripts that I might allow someone else to direct. I mean, I haven't yet, but well, actually, that's not true. I wrote a segment in Scare Package 2 that Rachel Wiggins directed, and she did a wonderful job. But I was also the head producer on that, so I was able to kind of like make sure, that she was making the kind of the thing I wanted. But there was no issues with that because she did a wonderful job. But I think that's where it is for me. It's really with these ideas that I want to kind of curate. Like, I'm not as interested in directing someone else's script because I won't have that connection to what it is. Then I'm reading the script and I'm kind of inventing a different world, and I want to know what the writer's intention was, and what's important there. So for me, that's where it all begins and ends. And then I would say, as I kind of stumbled into producing, I mean, really, I worked with a producer who was awful. And I was like, man, I can screw up like this. Like, that's producing, like I can do this. And then realized that there were so many parallels to, as we alluded to earlier, in my management days. And actually another project manager, Alex Uding, who's now my director of post-production and worked with us on all our movies as well. We met in tech. In fact, a lot of the people that are at Paper Street, Cameron Burns and I met at EA Sports. That's where that happened. So, but I think as I became a producer and realized that kind of came naturally to me, like it was a very easy thing to help them kind of protect the vision and keep the management and all those aspects together. Producing is still not, even though I can say with confidence I'm a very good producer and can pull it off. I still think I have a lot to learn as a writer and director, and I'm still evolving and creating that, because like you always have things to learn there. As a producer, I feel pretty good. I'm like, yeah, give me a project, get it made. I'm going to support you and set up the director and the movie for success. But the best part about that for me is I get to learn from these amazingly talented writers and directors. I get to see them firsthand, how they block, how they work with actors, what they do. I get to read all the iterations of their scripts and help them develop them and see their thought process and how that works. And other writers and other directors, just all the combinations they're in, is a really special thing. So it allows me firsthand to continue to hone on my craft, which is to be a writer director, and the TV side is really writer showrunner, because it's director just reports to the showrunner. It's very different in TV. So yeah, that's kind of my vibe now, I guess.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Do you imagine that you're going to have time anytime soon to like kind of jump back into the director's chair? Because I mean, you got Paper Street Pictures, you're doing your producing thing, and the fact that you're show running too now, I can't imagine that you have all that much time to spare.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't direct while I was show running because of that, because it was just too much. There was so much going on, and we had to do a lot of writing, like as we were kind of, in prep and in production. The whole series had not been written yet. It got greenlit it was weird. It took forever to get greenlit. Then once it did, it went really fast. The writer's room was very truncated, and we had to hit a production cycle, and we had to hit a release date. So it kind of negated the ability for me to also direct. I really needed to lean into our directors there. So for those reasons, but yeah, no, there's no time. I mean, I essentially took a year off of producing movies to showrun and make Revival. And Cameron kind of took the reins, and Ashley and Alex and Sean and all them really took the reins to kind of get things going. I would jump in and help produce, in between. But yeah, I'm absolutely going to get back in the director's chair. I was thinking about doing it this fall, but now it just took longer for us to finish. Like, we're still not finished with Revival. Like, we're airing episodes, and I still haven't finished episodes 9 and 10. Maybe we're doing a mix of 10 on Friday. So it's still pretty crazy. But yeah, no, I'll definitely make a movie here and there in between, for sure. I mean, I have like 7 finished features, but I have 2 in particular that I know I could get the funding for, and I know I could get out and make it. It's just a matter of if we're fortunate to get a season 2 revival, that has to take priority, and I need to start writing on that immediately. So I'm kind of in this little in-between space. So I'm really focused on producing and getting some other movies up and going. We have some amazing movies that we're producing, and I'm helping others. And then, after probably, if we're lucky to have a season 2, I'll time out something so that I can go immediately after season 2 and direct something. If not knowing if there's a season 3. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. And another competency that you could pick up in corporate anywhere is time management, right? And that's definitely something that I imagine you excel at, to be, what do they say, balancing all these plates or whatever that statement is. But
yeah. No, it is. Yeah. That's what I think I said. I'm like, I need a calendar invite. If it's not on my calendar, I'm not there. Like, I live by that calendar. I have a task list every day. Like, the endorphin rush I get from pressing a button and watching it whoop and disappear and the line go through it is like everything to me. So that's how I organize my day. I wake up every day and I do the things that I dread most. So whatever the toughest thing of that day is what I'm going to focus on. And that makes my days easier. Otherwise, it actually slows you down. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the biggest lessons of time management to me. And it's a simple thing. It's a shift. It's like, oh, it's a meeting I got to do. I try to schedule that meeting in the morning, and it doesn't mean all of them are bad. It just means it's going to be long, or it's going to be intensive, or it's a lot to go through, or, but whenever there's like, some budget meeting or something that you're like, oh my God, and you got to be like, just get it out of the way. And then you're going to feel so much relief for the rest of your day. You're going to be more efficient because you got that thing done, and you're going to have more enjoyment. Otherwise, if you don't do it at the beginning of the day, you'll be dreading, oh, I got to do this, whatever. And you're not nearly as productive. So yeah, my time management, my productivity, I'm very proud of. And, I think I've come up with like a good system for myself and how to balance that. But yeah, no, it's vital. Yeah, to my survival.
Yeah, absolutely. So Revival stars an amazing Melanie Scrofano as a cop navigating interesting circumstances where the dead are brought back to life. This is a pretty ambitious series on the Syfy network. Tell me a little bit about how this project started. And I mean, we already talked about your involvement with it. So really just kind of give me the rundown of how it got together from the beginning.
Yeah. So as a producer, one of those directors that I met and really enjoyed working with, this guy named Luke Boyce. We made a small movie called Revealer. I don't know why it's REV titles, but we made a small movie called Revealer, and I really thought he was a talented guy, had a good vision. He took all my notes really well in post when I had a ton of notes on the edit, because I've been an editor as well. And, so I have a lot of opinions there, and he took them all in stride, and we just kind of hit it off. And he said, hey, look, I have this like dream project that I've got the rights to, this amazing comic book, from Image. It was a New York Times bestseller. I've been trying to get it made for years into a movie. He thought about a series at one point, and I was like, yeah, wow, that's a legit IP, like that's interesting. Let me take a look, and gave me the comics. I didn't want to read the script or anything first. I just want to read the source material. And I read the first issue of the comic, and I was like, dude, stop the presses. Like, this is number one, this is amazing. The comic that Tim Seeley and Mike Norton wrote and created, but it also was a pilot to me. Like, it just was this setting up of a world, ending with the line, "Don't tell Dad," the reveal of M as a reviver. It's not really spoiler. We haven't seen season episode 1. We're in episode 5 when this is airing or whatever. But but I think it's it just really captured something that was like these quirky characters, farm noir, as Tim called it. This murder mystery where the person is still alive, just solving their own murder. I'm like, that is cool as hell. And then it wasn't a zombie story. That's what I was worried about, that it was just going to be a zombie story. I'm like, I don't want to make another zombie story. Like, there's much more talented people. Let Craig Mazin go make the best zombie story. Let them make Last of Us. Let them do their Walking Dead spinoffs. Let Boyle and them make 28 years later. But like, that's not for me. I don't know what else I can add to that world. But this wasn't a zombie story. People came back from the dead, but it's not like that. Right. And so I was just all in, and I said, look, man, I think this is a TV series. He's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Cool. So how do we do that? I'm like, I don't know. But because I make movies, and this is a totally different thing. It's a fun TV series. So, and I said, but I want to try. And not only that, I don't want to just produce this. I want to make it. Like, I want to create this because I was so into the comic. And he's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And Luke had that tied to the comic. And I said, why don't we partner up? You know, you and I, let's make this together. We love making this movie. And he was all about it. I met with Tim and the creators of the comic that we hit it off as well. And they said, okay, hey, look, go out there and let's pitch it. And I've never pitched TV, but I had a lot of connections to a lot of buyers, sold a lot of movies. So we just started having conversations. And then oddly enough, we went to the HBOs, the AMCs, all the big ones first, who were hit or miss. HBO actually loved the show, but True Detective Night Country was too similar, and they're at Easttown. And so they were like, oh, that's a little, I was like, oh man. And it makes total sense. When you watch both those series, we are basically True Detective Night Country meets Mare of Easttown, but funnier, and a little more horror. So it's, and 1/100th of the budget.
Right.
But then so in a weird turn of events, I talked about Camera Obscura, my first feature. That was made by Universal. And the executive at the time, they were not supposed to release that version of the film. So the version that's out there is not the cut that I had made that I alluded to. And I had Final Cut even on that. I negotiated it. And something went wrong. They released the wrong version. And I remember having a meeting, and he was so apologetic. He's like, look, I'm so sorry. And, he's like, you have every right to be upset. And I was like, look, man, it's okay. It's already out there. What am I going to do? Go back to critics and say no. And this is all going to be weird and awkward. And, if down the road we can release the director's cut, fine. And what's unfortunate is there's a Blu-ray that says director's cut. It's still not the director's cut. And literally never made a light of day. But that's okay.
Wow.
And I never bitched and moaned and complained. I was super frustrated behind the scenes, but I was like, man, this is Universal. Like, I have that, the Jerry Goldsmith cue, and it rolls around the front of the globe, before the movie starts. This is pretty cool, even though it's not the movie I wanted to make. I don't want to burn that bridge. Cut to, 10 years later, and the executive now at Syfy and USA is that executive who worked with me on that movie. And I pitched him. And he's like, Aaron, you were so great. You were so gracious. You've taken off your career. I know that you know how to manage, and I know you know how to write, and that's what showrunning is. And they still wanted us to bring in a showrunner and different stuff, and they just kept saying, nope. I'm like, nope. I've never run a writer's room, never written on TV, but I'm doing the whole thing. And they were like, oh my God. But I had built up so much rapport with a lot of buyers. People knew me in the industry. They trusted me as a producer. And he said yes. I mean, it was pretty quick with them, actually. They loved it. They knew the comic and said yes. Then it took a while to actually, because what they do is they fund the pilot. So they give you the money to write the pilot. We had just had a Bible that Luke and I had put together, and kind of like a series pitch. Then they pay you to write the pilot. We brought in another writer, Michael Marisi, who was very familiar with the comic, and Tim, and he helped on that. And then that pilot, with our new show Bible that was updated, kind of, went through everything, ran the gamut of what our pitch was. That is what then goes to the head execs at NBC to decide if they're going to greenlight it. And that took them, a year, which was really tough because we went through strikes and stuff and things and all this. And we were told it was probably dead. And then all of a sudden it was greenlit. And then as soon as greenlit, it was like, run. And we had to go and make it. I was like, oh shit, now we got to actually make the show, and I have to show run it. Oh my God, So but that was the journey there. It was pretty crazy. And now has been the single most fulfilling creative journey of my life. It's where I'm best at, I think, in my career is as a showrunner. Like, it really does scratch all the itches that I have. I'm the creative driver. I was the lead writer in the series. I'm the creative driver to my ideas that are there. And then I'm also the producing side that I can do really well. So it's like, and I know how to produce to a budget. I know how to adjust budgets. I know how to do budgets, all this. So I had experience that showrunners didn't, and that and I think it paid off well for us and allowed us to make a show that, whether the show's for you or not, what I will tell you is that for the budget that we made it, you will not find a show that looks better. Like, period. I can put that flag in the ground and take that to the bank, because of, and everybody who's seen it, it's like, there's no way you made this show for this amount of money. And but that's what we do. That's how we make our features, and put the dollars on the screen is one of those mottos. And we very much did that. And again, with Luke as my creative partner there, and yeah, it was pretty special. Best thing I've ever done so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's awesome too. And it's also very scary with how you say how, you know, you got the green light and then it's just like super fast. So you get all this time waiting for it, and then the second it's greenlit, it's like you're like, oh shit, wait, this is real. And like before you could even think about it, it's already going. And I know you talked a little bit about you know, the possibility of season 2, which is up in the air. It's ambiguous because, like other competencies that we've talked about, dealing with ambiguity, I imagine, is a huge one in this field, right? So how many, like, so if you're able to get that season 2, how much source material is there, and how far out do you think you could flesh out the story? Because I'm not as familiar with the comic.
Yeah. I mean, it's so Tim and Mike created 47 issues, so there's a good amount of book there. We are, and what's nice is he set the stage for world building. And because we've also, Tim and Mike have been, you know, with us, they jumped in the writer's room a couple times as well. We stay in contact with them. Luke and Mike, or Luke and Tim in particular, are very, very close friends. So they're always hanging out. And they had ideas that they wanted to do and they didn't do, or, you know, different things. So there's no, I mean, for me in particular, like I have a 3-season arc that I've kind of, kind of 10,000 foot view created in my head and what's there, and put some stuff to paper. Beyond that, I don't know. I will say that where I want it to go. But the world building is so immersive and so expansive that I think there's so much you could do with this. And then strictly from the source material alone, I mean, it does a lot of things. There's a lot of plot in it. There's a ton of characters. So we really streamlined it down for season 1 to really focus on the murder mystery and the sisters. But I mean, crazy stuff happens in this comic, you know, and so there's definitely a lot of world to build upon and create from there.
Awesome. And you know, I'm really rooting for you guys, because what I've seen, I think I need to catch up on the most recent that was out there, but I love the show so far. It's fantastic, and the fact that it looks so good, and you're saying like how small of a budget it has in comparison to something like, you know, True Detective or whatever, I think that is just so impressive. What are some of, like, I know I'd say it's zombie adjacent, but like to your point, it's not a zombie show at all, right? It's adjacent. What are some like cinematic or even other, you know, television inspirations that came to mind when you were putting this together?
Yeah, like for us in our pitch deck, I mean, one of the first ones we focused on was Fargo, because it's small town murder mystery in the snow, quirky characters, and cool jackets, which is something that I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted cool jackets, which, by the way, are great when you're on set and they create these amazing silhouettes. But then when you're in post and all the jacket noises that you have to remove from actors moving around is no fun, let me tell you. So there's a downside to it. But you know, so Fargo. I mean, I read Noah Hawley's Bible. Luke and I analyzed it in detail for how he pitched the Fargo series and what that was, because that also was based on an initial property, but kind of did its own thing, which was really interesting. It was a different show, actually, what he was pitching than what it became. That's also interesting, of like how, you know, the original idea was that this would all stay interconnected season to season. And now it's totally different timelines and what's there. It's going to be more anthology based. And I think that's just another good thing, just to allow yourself to know that, yeah, even Fargo and this amazing, you know, show that was created was something that evolved over time, and that you allow the show to tell you where you need to go. So those are lessons that we learned. So that's probably the biggest comp that's out there, just a, you know, supernatural Fargo, if you will, horror Fargo. Excuse me. And then I would say Mare of Easttown was also a pretty big comp. And that in particular, in the way that they constructed the murder mystery, because, man, they just did something really special in how they would introduce the potential murderer, right? And who did it, and how invested I got so quickly with, you know, like, oh, it's the priest, and like, oh no, it's the ex-boyfriend, or oh no, it's this. Like Mare of Easttown did such a great job, and then it had shocking moments, like genuinely shocking moments. The violence was very visceral, you know, was there, and obviously you had this crass detective who made mistakes, which I thought was really cool. And Kate Winslet, obviously you get, the GOAT, gives you a lot of freedom to kind of do what you would like to do in those moments. But that's what I love so much, was that she was very flawed. I mean, literally in Mare of Easttown, she loses her job in the middle of the season because she steals drugs and plants them with someone. Like, that is unheard of, right? To take your heroine, your protagonist, and make them do something like that. But it made sense. Like, I'm like, oh, this is what Mare would do, and it totally works. It's just really, really great. So anybody who were to analyze Mare of Easttown, you'll see a lot of parallels. And I take no qualms in saying, yep, learn from the best, and what's there. And then, yeah, Agatha Christie whodunits, how those are done and constructed and moved, I think are really fun. Fargo is also very funny, so I think that plays into it as well. And then, yeah, it's a horror series, so the mystery of a good horror series and the Stranger Things vibe, there's some does a really great job in how they kind of move their horror. The early seasons of Lost, I think, do a really good job in how they play horror elements, and sci-fi elements in that. So yeah, all those put together, kind of led into something here.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great list that you got there. And it's it's funny that Mare of Easttown is mentioned because, as you said, when you talk to HBO, that was one of the examples they gave of like, with that in Night Country. But still, I'm very happy to hear the Fargo comparisons, because I was thinking about that actually when watching it, because you got some of the accents too in Revival, and I'm right away thinking of Fargo. And Fargo season 2 is still probably like one of the best, maybe top 3 seasons I've ever seen of television.
It's the Jesse Plemons one, right? Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, with Patrick Wilson. He's the cop in that one.
Yes.
Oh, I love
because
that.
Plemons and Dunst in particular, like that whole side story with that is so good. That's, one of the best seasons of television out there. Yeah, True Detective season 1, Fargo season 2. The last season of Fargo I thought was really good as well. I really enjoyed that too. The Bear season 2. Not necessarily a comp for this, but just things that I think of, like the Bear's emotional rot, like dealing with a broken family, was something we talked about a lot with Revival. And not all those episodes have aired yet, but like you can kind of see the cracks at the seam of the Cypress family if you're paying attention. And I think that was something that was fun for us to kind of peel back layers of and see what's there. And because that's what you want to do. Like as a writer, you want to beat up your protagonist. You want to beat up the people that you're connected to and get them stuck, because it's so fun to watch them get unstuck. And I think that's part of what's there. And being stuck with familial drama and strife is something that everyone can relate to. So yeah,
100%. And getting the character stuck, I mean, that's like the basis of any good characterization or character development, right? That's the beauty of it. You want flawed characters, because otherwise you're not going to see any development. There's like something to that I think is always great when you have characters that are more complex, because we don't want like a comic accurate Superman all the time, right? Just like the goody two shoes just does nothing wrong. You want a little bit of that, morally complex, flawed, you make mistakes. I think that's the most important thing in development, is letting your characters make those mistakes, because that's how they're going to learn.
Oh my god, yeah. Yes. I mean, we used Han Solo as an example when we were talking about Dana and Data Surface and Revival, and just that, look at all this stuff that this guy does that's wrong, the kind of mistakes that he makes, and but he's still so you just connect with him on such a level, because he's affable, because you're like, yeah, it's Han, he's gonna do what he does. And I think you want to reach this point where like, it's Dana, she's gonna do what she does, and what's there, and you're along for the journey either way. It just makes it relatable, makes you connect with it at an entirely different level. But yeah, the Mary Sue aspect of it all, and someone who can just do everything perfectly, it is troublesome, and you got to be careful about that and how you organize those characters and make that work.
Right, absolutely. So I like to bookend on these episodes. I start it and I like to bookend it with the same stuff for everybody. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? And this could be whether professionally or personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a wonderful relationship now. So 5 years ago, I'm glad to have that with Katie Stolp, who's she's a life coach, which is like the best thing for a filmmaker to have as a partner. So, I have no doubt that 5 years from now, that's still going to be the best aspect of my life. But then I would say, I just want to keep making TV shows. Like if you told me 5 years ago, if I said I'm going to show run a TV show, like there's no way. Like I wouldn't have even believed that was possible. But that was also because I didn't set expectations for myself. Like I was just like, I'm just going to shoot for it. Like every time, I'm just going to go for it. And I always say, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail big, right? So I'm not going to fail safe. No reason to do that. Like I'm going to go for it. Yeah. And so, I like ambition. I like pushing the envelope. And it was fun to go into, HBO and AMC and then eventually Syfy and NBC and say, yeah, I know that, yeah, good comic. I get it. I get it that you like it. I understand why you want other people to make it, but it's not. It's going to be me. And Luke, by the way, who's done nothing. So the two of us are going to do this whole thing. And that's it, and you got to trust me and you got to believe me. And it was crazy, and I skipped a ton of steps. But that's because I don't look at all these things as steps. I just look at it as something I need to do, and it's like, oh, that's never happened before. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it'll happen here. And I'm sure that comes from a sense of privilege. I'm sure that comes from a sense of, a lot of things that I've had. I've been very fortunate in my life. But at the same time, I've also just been someone who every time someone told me it was not going to happen or was impossible, that's when I got the most excited to try to do it, and so that's how I live my life. And so 5 years from now, yeah, I want to be making, like I really wish they weren't making the A24 Friday 13th television series, because man, would I have loved to have had Revival in my back pocket to pitch on that. And I want to create my own thing. I want to create my own series. Yeah. So it'll probably be creating my own series again, a big one, a horror series again, and what that'll be, I don't know. And then there's a couple features that I will have directed, but I know I'll do these things. Like I know I will, so it's just a question of how big will the series be? How big will the movie be? But I know I'll make them,
Yeah, and I'll be here for it. I think that's awesome, and it's great to be so sure and confident about what your vision is, because when people aren't, they lose sight of it, and then 5 years later they're in a completely different place than they really wanted to be. You know what I mean? I think that's great. Every idea you have to have. This is why the script has to be so perfect at the beginning. Because that script will start to get chipped away, molded until it becomes this mush of nothing. And if it starts as an okay script, you're going to have the worst shit imaginable left. But if you have something really, really good and refined, it's still going to kind of look like that shape at the end. So you got to start there, because budget, and then this couldn't happen, and this actor fell through, and we've only got 1 week now to do all these things, and all these things that change and happen, and the Murphy's Law of it all, Bruce's Law of it all, if you will, that's going to happen. So you have to start there and know that this is going to be whittled away, and can that vision remain intact? Because it's a cliche, but it's very true, and it's TV and movies the same way, but it's the movie you write, the movie you shoot, and the movie you make. And it is evolving and changing every step of the way. So if you don't know your vision, and you haven't secured what that is, by the time you get through production and development, and because everybody else is going to come in and tell you what's wrong with your vision. They're ready. And if you have flaws and you're holding back, they're going to hold on to that, latch onto it like leeches and suck you dry. And then you're going to be like, what is this? I don't even know what this is anymore. And it happens all the time. But if you have a strong vision, and don't get me wrong, you need to be collaborative though. You need to listen. You need to think about, what is the note behind the note? Like, why are they telling me to do this? Is that because they're just idiots? And you could just like write it off as some like funny story that you've heard on podcasts once before? Or are they saying, no, we need to reach a specific audience. That's how it gets funded. And you have to say, okay, in order for this to be funded, I need to reach this audience. Now, understand their note from that perspective and say, okay, how can I reach that audience? What can I do to help that happen while not sacrificing my vision? But your vision is going to have to morph and change and move. And so if you can understand that, so when they start coming in and chiseling at it and trying to shape these rocks that you have, this sculpture that you have,
it can hopefully stay and remain something similar to what you had originally envisioned. But you better be able to envision it and be able to run with this when the time comes. Otherwise, they're going to take it away from you.
Yep, and beautifully stated. I completely agree. So here at the end, feel free to plug. Like, obviously, we could plug where Revival is, but if you want to give folks listening, just your social media handles, all that fun stuff, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything to me right now is people to watch Revival. Like, I don't care about myself whatsoever. Please watch Revival. Peacock right now, you probably don't have a Nielsen chart at home. If you do happen to have it, someone who has a Nielsen, go park yourself at their house and just play it over and over again. Dear God, please. And then tell me, and I'll Venmo you $10. But beyond that, yeah, go on Peacock. Please give Revival a watch. And even if you don't like it, but you want to support an independent filmmaker and so many independent people who help make this happen. This was not a studio project. This was made independently. We sold to a studio. You can put on the background and press mute. I'll even take it. But that would be amazing to have those views on Peacock, and rating it on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and all that goes a long way too. But in particular, we need the views right now. So that's what I want. And then myself at Aaron B. Koontz, pretty much everywhere. And I do love to talk to fans of our work and what's there. So you will typically engage, especially like on Twitter, although it's kind of a cesspool on there right now. But we do live tweet every Thursday when the episodes air on Syfy. So we will live tweet, which is a lot of fun. Melody Scrofano does it with me. Romy Weltman, who plays the other co-lead. All of us will jump on and tweet, which is a lot of fun. So, and then I just kind of go away from Twitter in between there.
Yeah, that's a good call. But awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm excited to see where Revival goes from here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate it, Sean.